Colin, thank you for being available to chat from Inspire Realty. And you have an amazing business that you have developed and grown, and you serve many folk. I'll have you just introduce who you are and a bit about your business, if that's all right.
Of course. Thank you, Ben, for the opportunity to share my story, my journey, and my intention is to share some ideas and wisdom that you can walk away with that you could potentially implement not only in your personal life but in your spiritual walk as well. My name is Colin Lee. I'm the founder and CEO of Inspire Realty. Essentially, we are a buyer's agency and a property investment advisory firm. And our goal is simply to assist our clients to build profitable property opportunities. So that's what we do. So there are two parts to the business. Essentially, it's property advisory in the first place. My assertion is that not everyone knows what they want. So I think you've got to begin with the vision, because it is said many times, without vision, people perish. So what oftentimes I find is people have this intention of building wealth and creating a better future for themselves, but they don't know where that goal is. And it begins by understanding your end goal. And so a lot of times my role with a client is helping them to model out what they want, potentially in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And then my job is to create a bit of a plan and a bit of a roadmap for them to go from where they're at in their current financial position to where they want to be potentially in the next 5 to 10 years. And everybody's goals are different. My goal when I started, in my property journey was simply to create enough assets that I can utilize to ultimately, I guess, release some equity off and retire my parents. My goal was to retire my parents, and I did that, 8 years ago, which has been probably one of the most rewarding things. But for me, creating that asset to be able to allow me to do that has been refreshing, and it's been rewarding for myself. So that was my motivation. I've worked with clients that have got the intention to retire in a certain age. They want to do charity work, they want to help their churches, they want to do more community work. I've got a client at the moment that I've worked with for the last 5, nearly 6 years now. She's on a 5th investment property. Very driven, very ambitious. Her goal ultimately was to go back and work pro bono for the Children Cancer Institute. She was a staff member there, and then eventually she left that role to proceed with growing and developing a career, and then being able to go back one day to work pro bono for a charity and an organization that's very deeply, closely related to herself. So everybody's different, but you've got to begin with the end in mind. So that's what I do as a property investment advisor, is to help you gain clarity in terms of your vision, and then put together a bit of a roadmap. The second part of what I do is once we've established, okay, this is your roadmap, you're going to buy 3 properties in the next 5 years. This is what we're going to do. You work closely with someone like yourself as a mortgage broker to kind of model that, to make sure it's realistic. Because with well-intention, if you haven't got the resources to be able to allow yourself to do that, then it's all a dream. So it's important to kind of make that a reality by understanding what income do you need to be earning, what sort of savings you need to have to be able to put you in the position, a financial position, to be able to achieve your goals. So then the acquisitions team come into play. So as a buyer's agent, our goal then is to help our clients to navigate through the whole property purchasing process. A lot of our clients are very, very busy professionals. And so when you're doing something that's not 100% intentional, you lose momentum. And so I find a lot of people, they say, I want to buy a property, and then 2 months later, 3 months later, they're still sitting on a pre-approval. They haven't even started applying for the pre-approval. So how on earth are you going to be, getting into the market? But so once that happens, then I know the brief, I know the budget. It's a matter of then working out a strategy to procure and to assist them to get those opportunities.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's great. And it's true. Procrastination, I think we can all relate to that. So I'm really curious. So you work with a lot of different individuals, and one group of individuals are those in the Christian community, faith-based folk. So I'm curious, what kind of thinking do they often need to work through about money and wealth before they're ready to really invest and build it and actually put that and create a plan? Have you seen any sort of struggles there, or any sort of mindset shifts that have to happen?
Yeah, no, 100%. I've seen two distinct groups. Let's talk about the first group. And the first group is in the back of their minds, prayerfully, everyone has ambitions. Everyone wants to do better in life. There's no doubt about that. But because of certain Christian upbringing, certain doctrine, I would use that. There is that. There's almost like that stigma on building wealth, prosperity, and making money, and how is that going to impact me as a Christian? Am I here to create wealth, and be selfish? And, money doesn't grow on trees and all these things. And so you can't serve both man and God. And there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace. And I grew up with that, to be quite open. So, I struggle with that mindset of, do I really even need to build wealth? Why do I need to build wealth? How do I honor God with my wealth? Or, so there's a lot of confusions. And so I think for me, addressing these group of people, it's about helping them to understand that there is blessing. It's just what you do with the money that you've been blessed with. And bottom line, when you peel the onion back, it's all about stewardship. As long as you honor God with your first fruits, then great, you are honoring God, because you are advancing His kingdom, whether or not you're giving through His church, His charities. And so from a Christian space, that has to be addressed. And I take people on a bit of a journey. So there's a lot of a mindset shift in that process, to get them to be in a spiritual position to go, this is a good thing. It's good to be blessed, just so that I know I can be a greater blessing to others. And my story illustrates that. There's no way I'd be able to help the Vinnies, to be able to help the Emmanuel City Mission, to help World Vision, and multiple charities that I've been able to serve, both financially, from my treasure, but also my talent and my time, had I not built the nest egg and the wealth that I'm able to contribute. So on one end, that's what it is. On the second group of people, I find they are okay with building wealth, but it's just getting used to the idea of what I need to do. What are some ethical investments? What are some moral things I can do to steward my wealth? And I like to use the parable of the seeds. Everyone's given a handful of seeds, the parable of the seed and sower. And no doubt throughout your life, the seeds would represent money. You spread your seeds, and you spend your money in different, platforms and things. But some seeds will no doubt fall on the pathway, and it'll wither and die. Some will fall on ground where there's weeds, and it'll grow for a period of time, and it will be sucked out of its death. But some would fall on good soil. And what I'm proposing is the stewardship of your wealth has to be multiplied, because when you plant these seeds in good soil, guess what happens? It'll grow and return you a harvest of 30, 60, and 100 times. That's in the parable. And so you've got to be very, very prayerful and almost intentional about where you plant these seeds, because we are given a finite amount of seeds to plant. And these are the resources that you're blessed with in terms of your exchange of time and money. And it's really the parable of the talents as well. To some of us, we're given 5. Some of us are given 10. Some of us are given 1. And the master would bless those that are able to multiply what you've been given. And therefore more responsibility will be given for those that are faith-filled. So that's the mindset. It's understanding ethical platforms. How do you determine the right investments to steward your money and invest in? And that's another big question in itself. So those are the two main struggles that I find Christians go through almost on a regular basis.
That is, I think it'd be very fascinating to work through some of those, blocks or mindsets with your clients, because everyone will have come to wealth building from a different place. And so I think just acknowledging that it can be tricky, especially in a faith-based community when thinking about money, but the idea of building wealth is not an evil one, but rather it's something that we can use to really steward and then bless others. I think it's a whole aspect of building community and providing hospitality and using that as a way of really attracting people to the faith as well. Christians are called to be generous, and it's hard to do that when there's not a lot to be given. I mean, we all can be generous, but it is a multiplier effect when we have more. So it's definitely a challenge for Christians, I would say, coming to this space. So thanks for sharing that. Absolutely. There are some fears or stumbling blocks which probably stop people at the door when they first talk to you. Do you find they approach you and then they get cold feet, or like someone gets in the way, or what stops some of your clients from just taking the next step, even after sort of, braved up and actually spoke to you?
I'm in a very fortunate position. I have a very look. I don't believe in meeting a client and expecting them to choose to work with me straight away. I believe everyone's on a spectrum of a journey, and so I always say, what value can I add to you right here at this point in your life? What support can I add to you? Who can I connect you with? What mindset? What wisdom can I share with you? So I choose to believe that everyone's on a journey. Not everyone starts with me straight away, but you've got to have two key fundamentals before you get started with me. So as much as you may be fearing about me working with myself, for me, I'm also quite selective in terms of who I work with, and I'm very, very clear about this. The two key pillars you need to have is, number one, you must have the right mindset. The mindset of abundance, the mindset of you've got to be blessed to be a blessing. You are mere but stewards of what you are blessed with. And these are your treasures that you've been blessed with, but your time and your talent as well. And everything is correlated. I would assert that your treasure is directly proportional to the talent and the time that you've invested in growing your company, in servicing the organization that you're working with. So it's all stewardship. And you've got to understand that that money that you are stewarding is not yours. It's God's. It belongs to the kingdom. And so as God's steward of this money, you gotta realize that if you earn and you've got $10,000 in your account and you're not multiplying that, then what happened? You're basically putting it under the bushel. And then what happened to the servant that did that? The master took that away because he hadn't multiplied it. So be very, very careful with that. So your mindset has to be growth, abundance, multiplication, not for your own selfish purpose, but to multiply that and to be a blessing to, I talk about the four causes, the charities that you're involved with, the church that you're participating, the communities that you're part of. So it has to be very, very intentional. And if you can have clarity over what your money is, where your money is going to go, then you have the right mindset. You have to be very, very clear. So I find the stumbling block is if you don't have the right mindset, then there is that fear of proceeding. Actually, it's also the fear of success. What if I do make all this wealth from property? What do I do with it?
Yeah, that's right.
And so that can be a bit of a deterrent. And over the years I've worked with Christians that say, no, is really building wealth an ethical thing? How do I build an investment property portfolio where I still maintain that portfolio as a blessing? And so I said, look, there are many options. I've got clients that they've purchased properties and they're very specific in terms of who they like to rent it out to. They said that if there is missionaries or pastors or leaders in the church that want to rent, we'll give them priority and we'll allow them to rent it at slightly below market rent. So that's a good thing. You can be a blessing to those. There's another client of ours that have intentionally built their portfolio and they've engaged a property manager to assist women that are vulnerable in the community and to give them priority over the rentable into housing. So that there are many ways of doing this. You can work in the secular space, but really contribute towards the advancement of the kingdom in a very generous way. So there's some real practical implications of how you can do. So from a mindset perspective, it's all about the belief and the conviction that this is not your money, this is God's money. You've been blessed with it. Go multiply whatever you've been given. If it's 10,000, if it's 100,000, go multiply that so that you can be a greater blessing to others. Then obviously there's the money. I don't like to push people to the extreme, maximum borrowing capacity. I always, encourage my clients to have some buffers. So if someone comes to me and say, Colin, I've got a pre-approval to buy $1 million property, the fear is, I'm gonna buy $1 million property, and then what do? I've got not a lot of buffers. And so from a money perspective, you've got to be in a, I wouldn't say safe for the safe sake. I think you've got to have enough buffers to go, if something happens, how are you going to fund you holding to that investment property? How do you drive the cash flow and things like that? So there is a very practical, real fear in front of people, and that is the cash flow. How do I manage if all these things happen? So one of the things I like to do with my clients, okay, you've thought about the worst case. The worst case is you don't have a tenant for a couple of months. The interest rate goes up by another 2%. What if all this happens? Well, you can't change all that, but what you can do is manage it. So okay, well, let's just do the worst case scenario. Okay, it's going to cost you an extra $200 a week. Are you in a position to be able to fund that? If it's not, don't do that. So worst case, what's the likely scenario, which is 90% of the time that's what happens, and then what is the best case scenario? And you take all those scenarios into consideration and you make a well-informed, sensible decision that works within your lifestyle. So don't let fear stop you. But those are real fears.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate sharing that. Yeah, wonderful. It makes me, when we talk about wealth building, the Christian space, the book that comes to my mind constantly is one called Gospel Patrons. And it talks about the business owners that were funding the mission behind all of these large church fathers in the past. And we often don't think about how they achieved just financing what they were doing. And so it's a wonderful book that sort of shows wealth can be used for glorifying God and growing the kingdom. And I think as Christians, we need to embrace that idea and not be fearful of it. So thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate that. Colin, you do some great work. If anyone wants to get in touch with you and your business, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do that is to book a discovery session. We'll do a quick diagnostic in terms of exactly where you're at. You reach out to our team at inspirerealty.com. There's a little button there for you to book a discovery session. Totally no obligation for you to proceed with us. It's simply to have a proper, robust conversation about where you're at, where do you want to go, and genuinely unpacking it and seeing if we can help you.